This is you. One day you stepped into a black hole and was transported to another world, Proxima Centauri b. And then, once again you appeared here. But this time, you had an entire starship at my command, fully equipped with supplies and a skilled crew. How would you survive on this world for 100 years? Let's find out. The first year on Proxima b was marked by fear and uncertainty. Yet survival in that fragile beginning laid the foundation for what would follow. A decade of struggle, adaptation, and the first fragile steps toward permanence. The settlers did not live under open skies. The surface was too hostile, a place of deadly radiation, thin toxic air, and brutal extremes of heat and cold. Instead, they carved their existence beneath the surface, within layers of rock and ice. Here, shielded from the flares of a volatile red dwarf, humanity began its quiet war against extinction. The first decade became an age of infrastructure and improvisation. Modules brought from Earth were no longer temporary shelters, but the skeleton of a growing colony. Reinforced with local stone and ice, they became pressurized caverns, faintly lit by artificial suns powered through fragile solar arrays, exposed cautiously on the surface. Water was the currency of survival. Melted from subsurface ice, each drop carried the weight of life and death. It was purified, recycled, split into oxygen to breathe and hydrogen to fuel small generators. In this silent barter with the planet, survival meant transforming ice into air, fire, and hope. Food posed an even greater challenge. Traditional crops could not thrive in toxic soil, nor beneath skies stripped of ozone. The first decade saw the rise of biospheres, sealed domes of pressurized air, where algae and hardy plants were cultivated. These green islands glowed faintly in the red twilight, fragile ecosystems sustained by human ingenuity. The planet fought back. Solar flares surged without warning, disabling power systems. Dust storms raged at the boundary of day and night, coating solar panels in suffocating layers. Equipment corroded faster than expected under alien conditions. Every repair was a battle, every breath a reminder that this was not Earth. Yet, year by year, the foothold deepened. The colony learned to use the Terminator line, that perpetual twilight between day and night, as its anchor. Here temperatures were harsh, but survivable. And the contrast between blazing light and endless darkness offered opportunities. Solar energy could be harvested from the day side, while storage depots and cooling systems thrived in the frozen night. By the end of the first decade, the colony was no longer a fragile outpost. It was a system, still precarious, but increasingly self-sustaining. Caverns filled with breathable air, reservoirs of melted ice, glowing greenhouses beneath protective domes, and networks of tunnels connecting the first generation of Proxima habitats. No one gazed at the alien sky without caution. The planet remained hostile, unforgiving, but within 10 years, humanity had done what seemed impossible. They had not only survived, but begun to adapt. The first decade on Proxima b was defined by survival. The second decade brought something far more profound, the beginning of a new chapter in human history. For the first time, life was not just preserved here, it was created. The colony's fragile balance of air, water, and food gave rise to an extraordinary moment. Children were born beneath the red sky of Proxima b. They would never know Earth's oceans or forests, never walk beneath a blue sky. Their first breath of recycled oxygen, Their first steps inside underground corridors marked the dawn of a generation shaped entirely by an alien world. Physiology began to change. Raised under lower levels of natural light, their eyes adjusted to dim environments, thriving in the glow of artificial suns. Living under constant shielding from radiation, their immune systems evolved differently, guided by the controlled environments of biospheres. Over years, subtle adaptations hinted at the first steps toward a people no longer bound to Earth, but molded by Proxima itself. Psychology too was transformed. For the elders, Proxima was exile. A harsh frontier rested from a hostile cosmos. For the young, it was home. They did not mourn the skies of Earth. They drew pictures of the twilight horizon, the eternal band where day and night met. Their lullabies were sung to the rhythm of air recyclers and water pumps. Their myths, their dreams, belonged to a world of red light and shadow. As the population grew, so did the infrastructure. The biospheres multiplied, each one larger and more ambitious than the last. Experimental crops were engineered to tolerate low pressure and synthetic soils derived from regolith. Tunnels expanded deeper, weaving into sprawling networks where entire generations could live without ever stepping onto the barren surface. Exploration pushed outward. Equipped with improved shielding and autonomous rovers, expeditions reached farther from the Terminator line. They discovered vast plains of frozen carbon dioxide shimmering like glass under the faint glow. They mapped rivers of ancient ice, trapped beneath stone, relics of climates long gone. Every survey revealed Proxima b as a world both alien and strangely familiar, harsh yet filled with hidden resources. Yet the planet remained unforgiving. Solar flares struck with violent regularity, overwhelming shielding and blacking out colonies. In these moments, life itself hung on the resilience of redundant systems. For the children of Proxima, such blackouts were part of childhood, lessons that survival here was never guaranteed. As decades passed, identity began to shift. A new question emerged. Were they still Earth's children, or had they become something else? Earth was now more than 4 years away by the speed of light, and messages arrived delayed, fragmented, often obsolete by the time they were heard. The voices of Earth grew fainter, while the rhythms of Proxima grew stronger. By the 25th year, the colony had expanded into a network of semi-permanent habitats, linked by tunnels and supported by bioengineered ecosystems. A generation had risen that called Proxima b not a frontier, but a homeland. For them, Earth was a distant legend, a story told by their elders. And so, the second generation of humanity stood at the edge of the galaxy, not as visitors, but as natives of a world that was never meant to sustain them. The first quarter century on Proxima b forged survival. The second brought birth. But the third era unveiled something inevitable in every human story: conflict. By the 25th year, the colony had expanded into a web of domes, tunnels, and biospheres. Systems recycled air, harvested water, and grew food in fragile balance. Yet beneath this progress lay a question that could not be avoided. How should humanity live here? Two visions emerged. One saw Proxima b as an enemy to be conquered, a place to be reshaped by technology. This vision demanded aggressive terraforming, fusion energy, and planetary engineering on a scale never before attempted. It saw the world as raw material, to be bent to human will. The other vision sought coexistence. It looked at the red sky, the frozen plains, the hostile flares, and declared, "This was not Earth, nor could it be." To survive, humanity must adapt itself to the planet, biologically, culturally, spiritually. This vision called for restraint, for balance with the rhythms of a world that would never yield. For years, the tension simmered beneath the surface. But as the population grew, so too did pressure. Biospheres became crowded. Resources were stretched thin. Every failure of a water recycler, every blackout during a solar storm, rekindled the question. Technology or adaptation? Control or surrender? The division deepened. A group broke away, establishing a new settlement closer to the Terminator line, where conditions were harsher but resources more abundant. They believed risk was the price of true independence. Others remained within the safer caverns, choosing stability over ambition. The planet amplified the division. Solar flares scorched exposed systems, while freezing darkness claimed the careless. Each environment favored a different philosophy. In the twilight settlements, humanity wrestled directly with Proxima B's extremes. In the shielded colonies, life was cautious, insulated, controlled. For the first time, Proxima B was no longer a single colony, but a fractured society. Communication lagged. Tensions hardened. Though no weapons were raised, the silence between settlements carried the weight of unspoken hostility. Yet in this era of division, there was also growth. Competing visions pushed technology forward, stronger shielding, more efficient biodomes, new methods of energy storage. Conflict, though dangerous, became the crucible of innovation. By the 40th year, humanity on Proxima B was no longer united, but it was undeniably entrenched. The settlements were not temporary outposts, but rival experiments in survival. Different answers to the same question: how do humans endure a world that resists them at every turn? By the 40th year, survival was no longer a daily gamble. Humanity's settlements had endured storms, flares, and the slow erosion of hope. With endurance came confidence, and with confidence, curiosity. The 5th and 6th decades marked the beginning of systematic exploration. What had once been a narrow strip of safety along the Terminator line expanded outward into bold expeditions across Proxima B's frozen continents and scorched deserts. Teams equipped with radiation shielding and autonomous drones ventured into the eternal night. They found landscapes sculpted by ancient glaciers, valleys filled with frozen carbon dioxide, and mountains rising sharp against a black sky lit only by distant stars. In this darkness, silence was absolute, a reminder that no wind, no life, no voice had ever touched these plains before. Others journeyed into the eternal day. Here the ground cracked under relentless heat, and rocks glowed faintly beneath the constant red sun. Instruments detected chemical reactions on the surface, traces of volatile gases that had long since escaped into space. It was a reminder of what Proxima B might once have been, a world with oceans, rivers, perhaps even its own biosphere, now stripped bare by the fury of its star. The most profound discoveries came from beneath the surface. Drilling operations near the twilight regions uncovered subsurface reservoirs of liquid water, insulated by layers of rock and ice. In these hidden oceans, chemical signatures hinted at organic compounds, simple, fragile building blocks of life. Whether these were relics of a past ecosystem or whispers of something still lingering remained uncertain. Exploration also brought expansion. Outposts were established far from the central colonies, designed not just for science but for permanence. These remote bases tested humanity's ability to endure without the safety net of the main settlements. Life in these places was austere, defined by silence and isolation, but it revealed the scale of the planet, a vast world waiting to be mapped, claimed, or perhaps respected. The discoveries ignited imagination. Could life once have existed here? Could it still? If so, was humanity alone on this planet, or merely the newest chapter in its story? Technological advances mirrored these questions. Improved reactors reduced dependence on fragile solar systems. Hydroponic towers within biospheres produced greater yields of food. Genetic experiments tailored plants to Proxima's spectrum of red light. Each advancement was another step toward resilience, another tether anchoring humanity more firmly to alien soil. But exploration was not without cost. The further expeditions pushed into day or night, the more the planet revealed its hostility. Solar flares crippled outposts, storms buried equipment, and psychological strain weighed heavily on those who lived in silence. Some bases vanished from communication, swallowed by the extremes of Proxima b. Yet, despite loss, humanity pressed onward. By the 60th year, the maps of Proxima b were no longer blank. Valleys, ridges, plains of ice, and fields of stone bore names and coordinates. A world that had once seemed untouchable was now charted, studied, and inhabited. By the 60th year, survival was no longer the measure of success. Humanity had endured. It had explored. And now, it began to ask a deeper question. What kind of society could exist on a world like this? Generations had passed. Those who remembered Earth were few, their voices carrying the weight of memory. For the younger, Earth was not home but legend, a place described in recordings and fading transmissions, a world of blue skies and seas they would never touch. For them, Proxima b was not a frontier. It was simply the world. Within the safety of underground caverns and biospheres, a culture began to take shape. Language shifted subtly, molded by life in enclosed habitats. New idioms describe the rhythms of air recyclers, the color of the red horizon, the silence of the night side. Stories told to children were not of forests and rivers, but of ice plains, of solar flares that lit the sky like fire, of the fragile line where day and night met. Education transformed. The old knowledge of Earth remained, science, history, mathematics, but it merged with new fields born only here: radiation ecology, twilight agriculture, subsurface engineering. A child growing up on Proxima b learned not only how to read and write, but how to monitor air pressure, how to harvest algae, how to seek safety when the star flared without warning. Survival skills were no longer emergency measures. They were traditions passed from one generation to the next. Governance also evolved. No single authority could command a world split into settlements and philosophies. Instead, networks of councils and agreements arose, fragile but functional. Some favored expansion, others conservation, but all understood the necessity of cooperation. On a planet so hostile, even division had limits. When oxygen systems failed or storms buried outposts, rivalries vanished, replaced by urgency. Conflict had defined the third era, interdependence defined the sixth. Culturally, identity shifted away from Earth. Rituals emerged, commemorations of the first water drawn from ice, the first biosphere to sustain crops, the first child born beneath the red sky. These were not Earth's holidays. They were Proximas, rooted in events that bound the colony to its alien home. Technology advanced alongside society. Hydroponic farms expanded into vast underground towers. Fusion reactors stabilized energy supplies, breaking dependence on the volatile sun. Genetic engineering refined crops and increasingly human biology. Subtle adaptations to radiation, bone density, and metabolism were no longer feared, they were embraced. The people of Proxima were not merely surviving, they were becoming. Yet there was also fragility. The psychological toll of life without open skies weighed heavily. Artists and philosophers began to shape meaning from confinement, painting murals of imagined landscapes, composing music that echoed the silence of the void. In the absence of Earth's nature, culture itself became the forest, the sea, the sky. By the 80th year, humanity on Proxima b was not a colony, but a society, distinct, resilient, and unshakably tied to the planet. Children no longer dreamed of returning to Earth. They dreamed of pushing deeper into the night side, of building larger cities beneath the ice, of reaching toward the stars beyond their red sun. For 80 years, humanity had endured on Proxima b. It had built shelters beneath stone, carved farms in the dark, and raised generations that called this place home. But survival on an alien world was never permanent. Nature, even here, had its reckonings. The first came from the star itself. Proxima Centauri erupted in one of the most violent flares ever recorded. Radiation levels soared. Shields strained to hold. Power grids collapsed. For days, entire settlements were plunged into darkness, their survival hanging on backup systems built for hours, not weeks. The flare seared equipment, corrupted data stores, and left scars on the surface where exposed outposts simply ceased to function. The second challenge was hidden within the planet. Subsurface reservoirs of water, once abundant, began to recede. Extraction became harder, costlier. Wells that had sustained generations ran dry. In some regions, melting ice introduced toxic compounds into the supply, threatening entire biospheres. Where once water had been the foundation of life, now it became the spark of fear. And then came disease. In tightly sealed environments, microbes mutated in ways no one had predicted. A sickness spread quietly through the colony, resistant to known treatments, born from the unique pressures of Proxima's artificial ecosystems. For the first time since the earliest days, death returned not from the star or the stone, but from within the shelters themselves. Together, these challenges tested not just survival, but the very fabric of society. Settlements turned inward, hoarding resources, cutting communication. Old rivalries reignited. Some argued for retreat, to abandon exposed outposts, to consolidate in the safest caverns. Others called for bold action, new drilling, new exploration, even riskier experiments in biology and technology. The planet's hostility mirrored the division within. Solar storms raged, water dwindled, sickness spread. The people of Proxima faced a question more dangerous than any before. Was endurance still possible? Yet crisis also brought resilience. Engineers built deeper shields against radiation, crafting entire cities beneath kilometers of rock. Water recycling was reinvented, drawing every molecule from waste and atmosphere. Medicine adapted, using genetic tools to combat diseases born in sealed domes. It was a decade of fear, but also of innovation. A crucible that threatened collapse yet forged strength. By the 90th year, Proxima society bore scars. Settlements abandoned, lives lost, trust strained. But it also bore proof of something greater. Even in the face of the fiercest challenges yet, humanity had endured. For nearly a century, humanity's presence on Proxima b had been a struggle. Every breath was engineered, every drop of water fought for, every harvest a fragile miracle. The planet resisted, and for decades humanity answered with defiance. But the final decade of the first century told a different story. After the storms, the droughts, the disease, came a shift not of technology alone, but of philosophy. Humanity no longer asked how to conquer Proxima b. It asked how to belong. The change began in the biospheres. Instead of forcing Earth's crops into alien soil, agriculture turned toward adaptation. Plants were designed to thrive under the red light of the star, their pigments tuned to absorb what Earth's green life could not. Algae, once a survival ration, became the foundation of cuisine, reshaped into breads, oils, and proteins that nourished a new culture. Food no longer imitated Earth. It became Proxima's own. Energy systems followed the same path. Rather than endless struggle to shield against the star's flares, humanity learned to predict, harness, and even benefit from them. Solar storms became sources of raw power, captured by advanced systems and stored deep underground. What had once been a threat now became a resource. Culturally, the transformation was profound. Ceremonies arose to mark the great flare cycles, not as disasters, but as rhythms of life. The twilight horizon, the line between eternal day and eternal night, became a sacred symbol, the place where balance was possible. Music echoed the silence of the night side, while art captured the brilliance of the red-lit day. A people once defined by exile were now shaped by belonging. Even the human body itself reflected the change. Generations born under this sky grew subtly different, eyes more sensitive to dim light, skin more resistant to radiation, lungs accustomed to enriched but recycled air. These were no longer exiles waiting to return to Earth. They were Proxima's children, the first to truly fit the world that had once sought to kill them. By the 100th year, Proxima b was no longer just a colony. It was a civilization. Underground cities stretched for kilometers, their walls painted with the myths of survival. Farms glowed green beneath crimson light. Reservoirs pulsed with reclaimed water. And above it all, the planet remained what it had always been, harsh, cold, unyielding. But now, humanity no longer lived in opposition. It lived in balance. Closing imagery. The camera rises from the caverns, through layers of stone, into the red twilight. The horizon glows, one half of the planet burning in perpetual day, the other frozen in endless night. Between them, a thin band of light, dotted with the glow of human settlements. The narrator's voice settles into a quiet, powerful cadence. 100 years ago, Proxima b was a world of silence. Today, it carries the breath of a new society. Not Earth transplanted, not an enemy conquered, but a harmony, fragile, enduring, and real. Here, at the edge of the galaxy, humanity did not merely survive. It became something new,